Hey, kia ora. Helen Brahms here, coming to you live from Sun City in Arizona. Hope you're all having a super fantastic, sparkling day. It took a while to connect. So, wow, it's taking ages. So you never know what happens when I'm waiting for the thing to go live. But welcome to Before the Dirt Nap podcast, number 1161. It's Family History Month. Did you know the month of October is Family History Month? What does that mean? It's all about the family, tracing your roots and looking at your ancestors and asking questions. All the different family history societies, genealogy societies, and everything are concentrating on helping people getting their trees started, so that they can start looking at their family trees and things. So here are some interesting questions for you. What are some interesting stories that you have about your family? Well, if you follow me on Facebook, on my Facebook page, I actually shared across a TikTok that I came across last night, which fascinated me, because everybody has a story to tell, and you never ever know what somebody's story is until they get a chance to tell it. And basically, the TikTok setup is that there's this guy standing there with a whiteboard. It's not till later on you get to see what's on the whiteboard, and he's got a bucket full of markers, and he asks this elderly gentleman to finish off the duck. And the guy takes out this marker and he just starts drawing and talking. And he's from Anchorage, Alaska, and he's there for his him and his wife were in town for their 61st high school reunion. I thought 61 years? Wow, that's awesome. And then he said 1961, and I thought, hang on. Okay, I got 60 coming up around the corner too. Not for my high school reunion, just an age. Just that number thingy. But what fascinated me is that he's just standing there and they're just having this general chit chat. And he mentioned how he met Walt Disney, like the actual person. And I'm like, oh my God. Like, you never know who you're going to meet, what their stories are, until you hear their stories. And that one just fascinated. I actually watched it several times because it just fascinated me that, here's this guy standing in the middle of this, standing on a sidewalk with a whiteboard. You get to get a marker and and he's got a yellow duck on there that doesn't have any bills or feet. It's just the head and the body, and you fill in the rest. And so this guy takes out a red marker, and you'll see which character he draws. I thought he did a pretty good job of it, but he starts talking about what his dad used to do and how he got to meet Walt Disney. And he said, and I loved his comment when he said, I am probably the only person around that is not on a heart, lung, and life support that has met Walt Disney. So, and he taught and just gave a little brief snippet about it. And I'm just like, you never know what somebody's story is. It could be something as fascinating as that. It could be, it could be a time when they got to meet somebody famous. But in this case, he did. And so I'm just like, that is so cool. And yeah, so if you want to go watch that video, it's just really cool how the whole story comes out. And this young gentleman's just standing there, just asking this guy questions. Me, as the moment he mentioned Walt Disney, I would have been all over that one with questions. But this guy I think the guy might have been a little shocked. And so he didn't ask a lot of questions, although I'm trying to remember if it was I think it was an edited video. But it was just you never know whose story. And I thought that's a great example of, everybody has a story to tell. And this is why I keep pushing people to tell their story. Those of you who have been with me since day one of my Facebook Lives, which was 1,160 days ago, thank you very much. And you have heard my story over the time. You've had different pieces of my story have come out as we've gone along, because life happens. I use myself as examples. I use some things that happen in my life as examples on to illustrate what I'm talking about and that sort of thing. But like I said, you never know what somebody has done in their life. And it could be, and this guy was just this elderly gentleman. Just like, that is so cool. And I kind of figured out, I thought, okay, graduated when he was 18. It's been 61 years. So do the math, he's 79, 80, somewhere around there. And but yeah, it was just this you never know. It was just one of those chance meetings, and it got caught on video. and it's there forever. And I'm like, yay! So we're actually going to be talking a lot about family history this month, because it is Family History Month. And yes, I know I'm on to, what was it? It is October, and it's October the 4th today. And we are going to be talking about family history and about tracing your family tree and some of the things that you can do to come around some of the stumbling blocks that are out there, some of the websites that are out there, some of the free sites that are out there to help you with your searches and things, and give you some little tips and tricks along the way as well. But today I want you to get started with, what are some interesting stories about your family? Think about those. You may not think they're interesting, but other people will. I still remember the time that we went to Tolaga Bay, New Zealand. You're going to go where? And Tolaga Bay is this tiny, tiny little town on the east coast of New Zealand, up near Gisborne. And if you're looking on the map, you're going to have to get a very detailed New Zealand map to find it, because it's up on that split piece that comes out on the east coast side. And it's actually famous because it has it's definitely the Southern Hemisphere's longest wooden pier or wharf, dock, whatever you want to call it. P-I-E-R. Yeah, P-I-E-R. So I have to remember how to spell. And we spent a summer vacation up there I think we're up there for like a week or two. And we would go out on that pier and go fishing off the end of it. And I love fish. For those that don't know, I love to fish. I just don't like, I'm happy to cast a line, pull a fish in, and then somebody has to take over from that point until it's time to cook, and then I will happily cook the fish. So somebody needs to be able to take the fish off the hook, descale it, debone it, get it ready so that I can then go in and cook it. I'm happy to do the cooking. I'm happy to do the catching. It's just the bit in between that but we used to go fishing off the end of the pier there, and it was a nice long walk, and it was a long walk out there. The longest wooden pier in the Southern Hemisphere, I think it is. I'm not sure if it's the world, but it's famous for this pier, and they have this little and there's a great campground. It was a full campground, and we were in town one day, and we were in one of the little shops in town. It's just not very many stores in the main street. It's like a block or two, and that's it. But we were in one of the stores there. It might have been a secondhand bookstore. Those are one of my favorite places to hang out growing up. And we hear the fire alarm come up, and the guy in the bookstore, the guy in the store says, "Oh, you got to go." He says, "Get up to the window or go out, stand outside, and you got to watch what's going to happen." And this like a fire engine thing that goes past, and it looks like one of those ones that used to be drawn by a horse that had an engine added to it. And then this pickup truck comes down the road, and as the pickup truck comes down the road, men are coming out from the from shops and buildings and stuff and piling into the back of this pickup truck as it follows the little fire truck down the street. And then the milk tanker, and if you've never seen a milk tanker, think of like a gasoline tanker. Okay, so you've got the milk tankers, you've got the gasoline tankers, all that big cylindrical shaped thing on the back of a trailer that can hold water, it can hold milk, it can hold beer. In New Zealand, it holds beer. Yes, we do have tankers of beer in New Zealand because they actually deliver and they're put into vats. But some of the pubs will have the big vats where the beer's on tap, and others will actually have the smaller kegs. So when you guys are here in Europe, I'm constantly changing kegs. I'm like, why don't you just put the big thingy out the back there? But anyway, so the milk tanker came down the street, and that was the water for the fire truck. And we watched this whole procession as it left town. So you had the fire truck going ahead, the pickup truck that all the volunteer firemen would jump into. Then you had somebody driving the milk tank, which was actually full of water for the fire truck. And off they went to go to wherever the call was. So that was quite a very entertaining thing to see when you were like 13 years old. So that was back in the 80s. But it was a really cool trip. And, I always remember that little place. So what are some of and most people, I found that story fascinating because of, it was part of New Zealand culture. It was part of our culture back then. I should go back there one day and check it out again, see if the pier's still there and see what the campground's like. And I haven't been in that area for a long time. So I think I might need to, I think it's time for another trip around that area. But anyway, so, there's those sorts of stories that you could tell. And, some people would be fascinated by, especially if somebody is interested in firefighting. That would be a very interesting story to tell somebody who's interested in firefighting. So think of things that have happened in your life, and somebody out there will be interested in what you have to say. So what are some of the interesting stories that you have They could be related to a trade. They could, a trade or a profession. And think about writing out those stories, because somebody who is in that trade or profession or interested in it may find those stories interesting. Even those that are going through, if you've been through struggles, write about them, because your struggle is going to talk to somebody somewhere, somehow, somewhere along the line. Do you have anyone famous in your tree that you can, the rumors are all good. It's okay to have the rumors, but can you actually prove that you have a connection in your family tree? And that's another good reason to go hunting for your family tree. What occupations did your ancestors have? It's always cool to go back and see what occupations your ancestors have. And those that have followed me will know that I have a long service history of military service in my family that goes back a few generations. I also have a lot of farming in my background as well, a lot of farmers. That's all on my dad's side. Farmers. I'm trying to think if there's any farmers on my maternal side. No, but I do have miners on my maternal side. I've got miners on my maternal side. I've got a criminal on my maternal side who is actually has an entire chapter in a book written about him. Yes, here's my great-granduncle. And I'm reading about this guy. And this guy's horrible. Oh, my God. But then what was even, and then you're like, I'm reading it because I know that this, that my great-granduncle is in this book. And so I'm reading all about it, thinking, hey, he's horrible. Oh, my gosh. How bad. And then it's sort of like, at the end, it's like, oh, yeah, you're related to him. But he was a tyrant. He was a sympathizer for the Nazis. He actually embezzled money from the Nazis. He was in Australia at the time. I don't know how the hell he managed to get hold of Nazi funds, but he did during World War II. He kept claiming he was either German or American. He didn't know who his mother was. Yet his mother would make trips across the Tasman to go and visit him in jail. He said he was born off the coast of California. He was born on the west coast of New Zealand. I could pick holes in all of his, and I could go through this thing. I could pick holes because I had the documentation to back it all up. And then I started. So then I thought, I'm going to dig a little more about this. See if I can find anything. And I actually found his arrest records in Sydney. So they were available online, and there was the actual police report of his arrest and everything else, and it was handwritten and in pencil in some areas. And they actually arrested him twice for They arrested him for treason and then let him go. And then they arrested him again, like 3 or 4 days later, I think it was. But I actually have digital copies of the actual police reports of the arrest for him and that. So they make very interesting reading. So I have infamous. Definitely infamous. So do you have anybody infamous or famous in there? You can twist them however you want to. So what are some of the occupations that your ancestors had? I had a third great-grandfather who was a bookbinder. His father was a jeweler. My fourth great-grandfather was a jeweler. My fifth great-grandfather was a jeweler. Bookbinder, jeweler. My great-grandfather, my paternal grandfather's father, even though he was a captain in the New Zealand Army, he actually had his own store, a gunsmith store, and he was a gunsmith. So there's a very interesting trades that come out when you go looking for things. But in England, I had a lot of my ancestors in England were farmers. What did they do down in Cornwall? I don't know what they did in Cornwall. I've got to figure out that one. But I know the ones that were in England were all farmers and things, and it would say in the census report how much land they had and how many workers they employed, and did they own the farm or rent the farm, and that sort of thing too. So it makes interesting reading, going back and finding out some of the occupations, because then it's sort of like, where do I get this love for the great outdoors and wanting to be outside more than inside? And it's because I've got ancestors who used to be farmers. They were always outside. And what was interesting is that even here in New Zealand, some of that farming trade is still going on today. From my grandma, on my paternal grandmother's side of the family, and it was my grandfather. Although, there's farming on my paternal grandmother's side of the family as well, and there's actually still farms going today on that side of the family as well. So my love for the outdoors and animals and stuff all comes from the fact that I had a lot of relatives who were farmers. Yes, nothing like fresh milk straight from a cow. Oh, it is so good. It is warmed milk. It is so rich and creamy, and it's just yum. And in New Zealand, it's all organic farming. The cows roam around in the paddocks or the fields, as you call them. We call them paddocks. So yeah. When did your ancestors immigrate from the country of origin to wherever the family's now set up? It could be from Europe to the US, from England down to New Zealand, or Australia. Why did they immigrate? Why? Some people have reasons, and some of it would be that they were, like in England, they were asking for volunteers to go down and help colonize New Zealand and Australia. Some of the ones that went to Australia had no option because it was a penal colony. And so some people got sent there as part of their sentence because the jails in England were getting overcrowded. So they put people onto ships and sent them off to Australia as convicts. So there's two different types of people that in Australia. You've got the convicts, the ones that were there because they were sent down as convicts, and the ones that volunteered to go down and help colonize Australia. Then you have the New Zealanders, the ones in New Zealand who went down to help. The government offered a program to help subsidize people on the cost of the shipping to go down to New Zealand and colonize New Zealand. For those that came to the US, no idea. Land of opportunity is the only thing I can think of. I do know that some of Brad's relatives were from Lithuania, the Ukraine, Russia, and they were Jewish, so they left for religious reasons because of religious persecutions and things. Not sure why the German ones came over, because they came over in the 1800s from Germany. So I'm not sure why they came over, but it'd be interesting to go back and have a look at the history of Germany at the time to see why they would have, what possible reason could they have to have come to the US at that point. So why did they immigrate? Looking back at history and things, and you find all sorts of cool stories along the way. You'll find all sorts of historical events along the way as you're going and thinking, oh, my family could have been involved in that, or my family could have witnessed that event. So think about things that have happened here. The entire world's just witnessed something that hasn't been seen in 70 years, and that was a state royal funeral. We haven't seen, of a monarch. We haven't seen that type of, the longest serving monarch in the world, passed away. So, Queen Elizabeth II passed away. And so where were you when you heard the news on that? Did you get up and watch the funeral? What were your emotions that you were going through during that time? Where were you when you heard the news? How did it affect you? Things like this. This is stuff that, believe it or not, this is stuff that people coming later in life, generations away, are going to want to know about. Oh, I had a great-great-grandmother who watched all of that. Oh, really? Yeah. And she left her journal behind, and this is what she said about it. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And of course, yes, she'll have all the newspaper articles and all the videos and all of that sort of stuff. But what was your personal experience during that time? Think about that. What is your personal experience during that time? Think of all the stuff that's happened, all the things that have affected people around the world or within a whole country. And you've got 9/11 that happened. Where were you? What were your experiences of that day? What are your memories of that day? Write them down. Different general elections. Where were you when the results came in for this election? Were you happy about the results? Were you not happy about the results? Especially for presidential elections, prime minister elections, whatever the leadership election is in your country. What was your reaction to that? Were you happy about it? Were you not happy about it? Why? Did they then go and do a good job? Keep the newspaper stuff out of it. Because we know that media can be a little biased on one way or the other and might stretch and dramatize things. So what was your personal experience? There you go. Some of the mega movies that have come out, the story, things like, Star Wars. I have a photograph of Brad dressed in full Planet of the Apes costume, complete with all of the, I've got to find out the name of that makeup stuff, where they actually stick the rubber mask to the face so it's conformed to your face, so you can actually see your eyes and your mouth moves and all that sort of stuff. Somebody will tell me what it is. Please drop the term in the comments below, please. that him and his friends all got dressed in full Planet of the Apes costumes and went to the opening of Star Wars, the original Star Wars in 1977. What were some of the movies that were the big hits when you were a teenager? What did you think about those movies? Did you do anything special when you went to them? Did you go by yourself? My story on E.T. It was the very first movie I ever saw in a theater by myself. It was a lot of years before I went and saw the next movie by myself. So I actually got on the bus in Waitara, took it through to New Plymouth. I had to walk from where the bus depot was to where the theater was, and sat in the theater by myself. And then at the end, left, walked back to the bus depot, caught the bus back home, and then had to walk back up the big hill to get home after the movie and stuff. But as a teenager, I was allowed to go by myself. Yes, that was a huge deal. So E.T. was the very first movie I ever saw by myself. The next movie I saw was The Overcomer, which came out in 2019. I think it was 2019 it came out. And that was it was either 2018 or 2019. I know I was living in the RV. No, it would have been 2019 at the earliest, because I was living in the RV at the time. And that was the very first time since E.T. that I had been to the movies by myself. After that, I was always going to the movies with somebody, whether it was with friends, on a date, husband, I was always, or family members, I was always going to movies with someone. So E.T. was the very first movie I saw by myself. The next movie I went to the theater and saw by myself was The Overcomer, which came out in 2019, I think it was, because we weren't in, it would have been 2019, because I didn't have Zeffy when it came out. It was before Zeffy came into my life. And that was 2019. So I don't even remember what year E.T. came out. We just have the 30th anniversary of it. Was it the 30th anniversary we just had of E.T. or the 40th? So it would have been like 82, wouldn't it? Yeah. My very first date, I was taken to see For Your Eyes Only. James Bond, For Your Eyes Only was the very first date I ever went on. Yeah, my very first date with my very first boyfriend. Went and saw James Bond, For Your Eyes Only. Roger Moore was the James Bond, but then I kind of got hooked on the James Bond series and realized, there's actually other James Bond movies. Wonder what they're like. Yeah, Sean Connery is still my favorite to this day. And this year they celebrate 60 years of James Bond. There are all these celebrations going on in England, or in different areas about for the 60th anniversary of James Bond. In fact, on Facebook today, I saw a life-size Lego version of the original Aston Martin, of Sean Connery's Aston Martin, from Dr. No. It's Dr. No? Oh, hang on, now I'm getting my movies mixed up. That's a detail I'm going to have to go find out, because there's a lot of details for James Bond movies. But I'm excited because November 1st, I start my James Bond Fest. And I think if you are a Prime member, you get Prime Video. And on, I think it's October 6th, they start playing James Bond movies. They're releasing the James Bond movies free on Prime for you to be able to go watch them all. But yeah, I do my James Bond Fest in November. I start November 1st and go through. So we're going through the 25th. There might be breaks in between though, because depending on what I've got on in the evenings. But anyway, so I take the month of November to watch James Bond movies. And I start at Dr. No, and then I'll end up with the last one, which I'm not happy about, but we'll see. We shall see. Anyway, so it is Family History Month. Think of ways that you can celebrate your family history. Have you done DNA tests? DNA tests are really cool in helping you prove blood relations. But then it's the genealogy side of it, when you do the family tree research, that helps you establish what the actual relationship is. So yes, you can find out those that you are related to by blood with a DNA test, but then the genealogy helps prove what that relationship is. So down in the list below, we've got those questions I just asked you, and we've also got, if you want to get your free copy of Family Tree Decoded, it's going across the bottom of the screen. There's also the link in the description below. Also, we've got there the National Genealogical Society has some free forms available to help you with your genealogy research. They have a pedigree chart, and what a pedigree chart is that it is name, birth date, birthplace, death date, death place. Yep, it's just basic information. And they've got a 4-generation one, which is you, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. And underneath the male's name, they've even got the date they got married and where. And that's the simplified version. And then you have, that's the basic version. Then you have the simplified version, which is basically all of that. But up in the top, on the very last one for each person, it's got a little box. Excuse me. And then you can say continued on, and you can actually, and then you write in the number of which chart they go to next. So you can actually continue on each of the grandparents and go to your second great-grandparents, your third great-grandparents, your fourth great-grandparents, and things like that. And you'll end up doing on different sheets, and that's if you want to do it the paper way. They also have the family group sheets, which are my personal favorite forms to use. And the family group sheet has all the father's information, all the mother's information, then it has their children listed down below. If you use something like Ancestry, when you open up somebody's profile and you've got all of their information of all the stuff they've done over the years, all the different events, then over on the side here, you've got the parents' names, and you've got the wife's, the spouse, because you could be looking at the wife's one. You've got the spouse's name, and then their kids listed down below. It's kind of like that, but a little more detailed on the actual view. But yeah, they're my personal favorites when I'm out researching things, because I can quickly write stuff in there rather than trying to type it into a computer. So yeah, family group sheets are my favorite ones to use. And then I just number them at the top and tell them which one. I'll put a number next to each of the children that says, oh, this one continues on this page, on these different pages and things like that. So they have some free, and I've got the link to go to that page there as well. If you want to discover your ancestors and their stories, there's the link to the website where you can book a time, and we can talk about whether you want to do the research on your own and just need some guidance, or whether you want us to do the research for you. And then there's a link there too for DNA kits as well, to go and get the DNA. And I think I've got it hooked to the 23andMe kit, I think that's the one it's going to. But yeah, so Family History Month, get ready. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff on family history this month, just to celebrate Family History Month, coming up with lots of different stories and things. And I'm going to be checking with some of my clients to see if I can tell their story, although I may still tell the story without mentioning names. But if I can tell some of the famous names that we've researched, that would be kind of cool. But I'm going to be contacting clients to see if I'm able to talk about famous people in the tree and things like that. So anyway, that's it from us for tonight. Have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. And let me check the calendar. I've got something coming up some one of these nights. Oh, that's Thursday. Okay. Yeah, tomorrow night, I'm actually going to go for 6:30 tomorrow night, only because I have another. No, actually, I'm going to give them 2 hours for that. Oh, that is the 2 hour. Okay, we're going to go for 6:15 tomorrow night, only because I have a thing that starts at 4 o'clock and is supposed to be an hour long. Last week, it went right up against my podcast. So I'm giving myself an extra 15 minutes just to get up, walk around, stretch, hydrate, and all that good stuff. So 6:15 tomorrow, 6:15 Pacific tomorrow night. We will see you back here with more about, I don't know, maybe we'll talk some more about family history. Maybe we won't. Maybe we'll talk about something completely different. Who knows? I won't know until tomorrow. So come join us and find out. Have a super fantastic, sparkling evening. Hei konera.